pizza. Christine, I hurt my elbow so bad. Oh, worst funny bone moment ever. Of course, I was thinking like, how am I gonna funly introduce this week, and I just smoked my elbow. So there you go, Christine. Compose myself, you can fight through the pain. Anyway, hello and welcome to this week's episode. I am honored, you guys, to share an interview that I did with the Canadian Student Leadership Association. And fun enough, the reason I got connected with this was because of a former student, which is also super special. So I am honored to have joined this event. I couldn't actually make the event in person, so we pre-recorded my session so that they could play it at the event. And I asked like, hey, like I would love to share that on YouTube because I feel like it was just a great way to talk about all the things that I've sort of been, feeling through the last few years with starting this business. We talked a little bit about mindset and how I started and some of the things that I feel like I had to overcome. So anyway, it was a really fun episode and I hope you love it. If you get any question that like sort of sparks in like while you're watching it, please drop that question below in the comments. Would love to dive deeper into some of these things that I talked about. So if anything really resonated for you, please let us know what that was in the comments and we will maybe make our own special episode about that later. But please enjoy my interview with the Canadian Student Leadership Association. Here we go.
Hello everyone, my name is Lydia. I go to Lockview High School in Fall River, Nova Scotia. I am pumped to be able to share the stage with Stacey Keller, founder of Ponyback tonight. Stacey Keller is the CEO and founder of Ponyback Inc. Stacey truly values belonging and inclusivity. Her tagline, "Your style fits here," not only describes the flexibility of her hat to accommodate many hairstyles, but also a sense of belonging she hopes her customers feel from her brand. I'm excited for all of us to learn more from Stacey tonight. To kick things off, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you brought Ponyback to life?
Absolutely. First of all, thanks for having me. It's wonderful to be here, Lydia. So my name is Stacey, as you already know, and I am a mom of 3 boys, which is kind of crazy. And I was actually a former high school business teacher and always sort of had like a big dream in my heart of wanting to start a business one day. And a few years ago, I was just like frustrated that I didn't have a hat that I loved. I remember like making my kids like wear their hats outside, and my oldest looks up at me one day and he's like, "But Mom, you're not wearing a hat." I was like, "Right, I'm not." And that kind of sent me on a journey to find a hat that I loved, and I just could not find one. And I remember it was summertime. I'm spending lots of time outside with the kids. And I was like, I love their hats. Like I was that mom that would like buy them the full back hat with like Toronto Maple Leafs or, their favorite sports team on the front. And I was like, I want a hat that's as nice of that, like that, but it's not going to work for my hair. And in the summertime, like you don't want to wear your hair down. It's so hot and all of that stuff. And I was like, I wonder if you could make a full back hat that had like an opening for your hair that you could then like close if you weren't using it. And so I took a really nice Oakley hat one afternoon. I ripped it open. I got out my sewing machine. I was like, I could sew like overlapping flaps into a hat or something like that. That didn't work out, but that was my first try. Anyway, I ripped out what I had done. And this hat was just sitting on my table, like almost closing. So I had this back seam totally ripped out. And I was like, that hat just needs a little help to close. So I was like, what do I have in my house that I could use? And I came across my kid's toy. So I literally broke into this, ripped out the magnets, and they just slid into the back of the hat. So now like this back seam this is our like patent pending design that has this back magnetic closure so that you can wear your hair up or down. And that's how it all started. It was like, I loved my kids' hats and the magnets.
That is so awesome. I can't believe you were a high school business teacher too. That is such a cool way to really launch your career.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so fun story I need to share with you. So I was in the middle of teaching a grade 11 entrepreneurship class, and I was working on this idea the whole year, and I couldn't tell them because I didn't, like, when you have something that's patent pending, like, you got to keep it kind of secret at the beginning. But I was able at the end of the year to reveal to them what I was working on. And when I did like this opening thing to show them it, the whole room went, oh, I was like, you guys are the greatest. So that was the greatest moment in my teaching career, was when they all were like cheering me on and loved my idea.
That is so awesome.
Yeah.
Our next question is that you clearly had to take risks to build Ponyback to where it is today. So what advice would you give to people that are wanting to take risks but have trouble finding the confidence to just go all into it?
Yeah, so I think this one is kind of like twofold. And I've definitely like been impacted by these two things in my life. The first is I feel like we all sort of have these limiting beliefs about what we are capable of. And I think they come from, maybe our upbringing or just society at large, just these messages that we're not really aware of until like something makes us realize and wake up from like being impacted by this limiting belief. So I will never forget, I'm like watching a random YouTube video one day, and this person in the YouTube video asked this question, like, if you could do anything and it didn't matter like how much money it cost to do it or what it would take, what would you do? And I just remember like instantly knowing the answer to that question was I wanted to start a business. And it didn't make any sense. I've been teaching for like probably 8 years at this point, which is a really great job. It didn't make any sense, but I had this internal desire. And at that moment I had realized like all these limiting beliefs about like what I could achieve and accomplish. I was sort of confronting them in that moment and realizing like, hey, yeah, if I could literally do anything, that would be it. And so why am I not? So I had to kind of deal with all the things like, oh, you can't be a successful businesswoman and a really great mom at the same time. That was one of my limiting beliefs. And I think I had several others, but I really had to do a deep dive on those things. The other thing I think is a fear of failure. I think we're all super afraid to start something and then fail at it. And I think the key for me, and I'm not gonna lie, there are days where I'm like, oh my gosh, what did I do? But I think I have faced the uncomfortable nature with failure and said to myself, like, worst case scenario, this thing implodes. Like be realistic about the actual worst case scenario of you going for this thing. The worst case scenario would mean that I would need to return to teaching, right? I would have to go back to that other thing that I was doing, but everyone in my life would still love me, and I would still be loved, and I would still have a family, and like all of those other things wouldn't be impacted, right? So that's my worst case scenario. Like I just go back to doing what I was doing before, and I'm still loved, and I'm still a whole person. So I think for me, it's sort of like reminding myself of that truth consistently and over again. Like, if this doesn't work out, it's okay. Like, you are going to be fine. Obviously, that's not the best case scenario, but like actually be like, okay, yeah. The other alternative is you don't go for this thing that you have in your heart and this like passion that you have, and you don't go for it. The worst case scenario of that is that you're going to live a life of regret. And is that what you want to look back on when you're like at the end of your time and at the end of your life, and you're like, oh, I could have been that, but I didn't try. So for me, I think it is, okay, worst case scenario, I'm going to be okay. But also looking at the worst case scenario of the other alternative, which is I don't want to live a life of regret. And I think both of those things coming together for me was what really like gave me the courage and the confidence to be like, okay, I don't live a life of regret, and I'm going to be fine if it all goes up in flames.
Yeah, and I mean, having that support system with your family and everything too is so important. That's fantastic that you have that opportunity. All right, our next question is, who is someone you look to for inspiration?
I love this question. Okay, so I am a podcast nut. I love podcasts. Like, that is sort of my part-time hobby, would be like, I'm listening to podcasts. And I think for me, in my like circle of peers and friends, I don't have any other sort of entrepreneurial people. And they say that you kind of become an average of the people who you surround yourself by. But if you literally don't have anybody in your circle who you can like help, and I mean, elevate maybe isn't a great word, but somebody who's like showing you what's possible or encouraging you, like you can always turn to other places. And for me, that was podcasts. So I had gone in real deep into like this podcast called How I Built This with Guy Raz. And so it's like he constantly is interviewing entrepreneurs. And for me, the one light bulb moment was like, when these entrepreneurs started, like none of them knew what they were doing. They just had an idea and a passion, and they were just super consistent and persistent, and they just kept going. And I think like that has just been a super great inspiration to me, is realizing like none of these people at the beginning of their journey had it figured out, and nobody had the experience. And I think we look at people's place when they're farther down the line, and we compare ourselves to the person who's been running their company for like 10 plus years, not that person who first started and what lack of knowledge and skills they had at the very beginning. So I think listening to that podcast, I mean, helped surround me with other entrepreneurial mindsets, but also gave me insight to like what they kind of look like at the beginning of their journey, which was also really helpful.
Yeah, that is a really good point. I think a lot of times people will glamorize the end result, but not where they came from and how they built where they are today.
Yeah.
100%. Our next question, do you ever have moments of feeling doubted by others or even yourself? And what advice do you have for people working towards something they believe but experiencing that doubt?
Okay, so I have like a two-part answer to this question. So because you kind of asked me two questions. So doubt when you're doubting yourself, and doubt when someone else is doubting you. When someone else is doubting you, I feel like you really got to question, who is this person and what opinion is this coming from? Is this a valid source? Does this person know what they're talking about? Like, really question their credibility. So I'll give you just a small example. Last year in January, I decided I'm going to spend a lot of time on TikTok. And my husband looks at me and he's like, you are wasting your time. Like, this is a complete waste of time. You should not be doing this. And I just look back at him and, my husband, I mean, he is a business background, but he does like no social media experience or expertise. He never even was on TikTok. I'm like, so how is his opinion on this particular subject matter relevant or valid? It wasn't at all. Like, he had no idea what he was talking about. So his reaction to, I'm wasting my time, I needed to sort that out, right? Like, I'm sorry, your opinion in this situation is not a credible one. I'm going to ignore you. And good thing I did, because TikTok was honestly my ticket to success last year. So I had to discredit his opinion. And so you have to do that. You have to ask yourself questions about who is giving you this judgment. And then secondly, when you're doubting yourself. Okay, so this is a slightly different answer. It happens to everyone. I am like on a roller coaster every other week. Like, oh yeah, like I'm gonna do this, I'm crushing it, and then all of a sudden be like, oh my gosh. That's normal. It's normal to kind of experience those ebbs and flows, and depending on what challenge you're facing, it's normal, because a lot of times when you're doing something new, you've never done it before, so you're gonna have those doubts. So my advice for that is to surround yourself with other people who are going through it too. So I have been a part of like 4 different entrepreneurial programs where I was with other entrepreneurs. And so I could talk to them about it. We could be like, yeah, like I'm feeling like that too. And like just normalize the feeling that you're not alone. So I really recommend to find a group of people in whatever place where you are, whatever you're doing, try to connect with some people who can kind of empathize with you, but also be your cheerleader. So have some people who are like, no, this is just a thing, like you're gonna get through it. So find your cheerleaders and find some other people who can empathize with you and that can like share that journey and understand what you're going through as well.
That is really well said. Thank you. So our next question, Ponyback has a strong presence on social media, like we just mentioned. What advice do you have of staying true to your brand and yourself on social media?
Okay, well, the thing, like, yes, people have told me over the past year, like, you're doing so well on social media, but like, listen, I'm still not always sure that I am doing it the right way, but I am trying to do it my way. And I think early on, I identified that my company's values were very close and similar to my own personal values, which made it easier when I was on social media, because then I could just sort of like, oh, should I post this on Ponyback? Oh, well, what does Stacey think? Like, because her values are also kind of mashed up with Ponyback's values. So I think you have to kind of go through the work to identify what your values are so that you just kind of have an awareness when you're sort of heading into it and you understand like, this is who I am, this is what I stand for. And you mentioned a few of those key pieces at the beginning. Actually, you did a really great job. So clearly that's coming out in the messaging. I'm super proud of that. But yeah, I had to do the work to get to that place where I could articulate that is the feeling that I wanted people to have when they came to my page. And so I think you have to just do the work, ask yourself some questions like, what are my values? What do I want people to feel when they come here to this place that I'm sort of hosting them online? And then just know what that is. And then so once you have an awareness of what that is, that can then feed through all the content that you're creating. On the other side of it is like the energy that you have for social media, because that can also be a tough one because the algorithms want you to be super consistent, posting all of the time. And then like, you'll get some bad comments sometimes, which could like throw you off your game. So couple of things that helped me out here were just to remember that anybody who's making a comment that is not a positive comment is usually like really hurting in their life. So you kind of need to have some empathy for them if you can. And that has actually really, really helped me because I have gotten a few negative comments. Like when your video goes viral, that's going to happen sometimes. And so I really had to be like, okay, like this person, like to say this mean thing is likely not doing okay themselves. And then I think that just sort of helps, like, it just helps you through it to understand that only hurt people hurt people. And so to have empathy for the person who's actually like trying to tear you down, which is kind of a crazy thing, but I like, honestly, for your sanity, that's going to be the thing. And also it's really hard not to, but to try to not compare yourself to other people on social media. And I definitely have gotten into that like thing. It's really, really hard not to, but you have to say, okay, I'm only going to compare myself to myself and my own progress. And that's the only thing that I can compare myself to, and try to separate it from the other people. And if that means like literally don't go to their page if it makes you feel terrible, like unfollow them, don't have that content coming up if that's not actually serving you. So those things have helped me.
That is really good. Like, I feel like not a lot of people think to tie in your own personal values with social media, so that's a really good way of putting it. So last question for tonight. If you could go back in time and give high school you one piece of advice, what would it be?
Okay, so just to give you a little bit of context, high school me was like a super shy, very quiet, very scared individual. If I were to go back in time and look her in the eye, I would just want to hold her and be like, listen, you do not need to worry about what anybody else thinks of you. You are made uniquely you. Like every single aspect that like you think is different or off or weird, like that is just setting you apart from every single other person on this planet. There is nobody else like you with your combination of everything. And so that is powerful. So if you can actually stop judging yourself for who you are, saying that you need to be like, look like somebody else, and instead spend all of that energy, because this is a lot of energy, appreciating your uniqueness, like the world opens. Like when you look at yourself and you're like, that makes sense why I'm like that. Maybe I should stop trying to avoid that because that's actually who I am. Like the world just starts to kind of like open doors, and I don't know, it just feels so refreshing. And honestly, it took me till I was like 30 to figure that out. So I would want to go back and just tell that like 16-year-old self all of that. Let's just like skip over that 15 years of you not knowing. And then, yeah, it's magical. It's just magical when you can just appreciate every aspect about you, because it's true. Nobody else is like you on this planet, and that is amazing. That was the interview. Had a blast chatting with Lydia. It was super fun. I hope you guys liked that, and if you haven't already, please like and subscribe to our channel. We would be super blessed and honored if you would follow along on our journey as we build and grow Ponyback. Thanks so much for being here and for listening as always. Have a fabulous week. Bye!